Courtney, thanks for joining us. So what were your initial thoughts when you heard Marc Miller talk about this land back?
Well, it reminded me a bit of when Justin Trudeau was first elected, and he made this bold commitment to a nation-to-nation relationship. And I said then, like, I don't think Justin Trudeau really knows what he's talking about. And I feel like Marc Miller's a little bit the same. You know, he's been criticized for co-opting the grassroots movement that is land back. And I don't think the Liberal Party truly grasps, you know, what Indigenous folks who live on the ground are saying and thinking when it comes to, you know, their aspirations for self-government. And, you know, they've really relied on the Assembly of First Nations and kind of the typical organizations that do consultation for them in Indigenous communities. And oftentimes, you know, frontline land defenders and water protectors, they disagree with the elected band council system within their communities. Yeah. And so it doesn't really seem like there's a real understanding of that complexity or what it means to actually implement the aspirations and the rights and inherent jurisdiction of Indigenous peoples in Canada, because there's a lack of commitment to some of the structural changes that would need to happen, say changing the Constitution, provincial boundaries, things like that.
Yeah. You know, would giving back at least some Crown land bring the government some goodwill, good favor with First Nations?
Well, I think with some First Nations, that makes a difference. But for people like myself, you know, I'm Haudenosaunee, I'm from Grand River, and our homelands, you know, and our the Haldeman Proclamation promises 6 miles on either side of the Grand River forever to our nations. And, you know, that land, there's no Crown land available within that tract of land. It's all held by third parties, you know, being developed without consent. It was, you know, the legacy of squatting and unwanted settlement, unwanted development means that there's no really Crown land to return. So that might work for some communities, but most of the Crown land is within, you know, the far north or in northern parts of the provinces, and won't make a real difference for some of the more, for the communities that are located, say, near urban communities or in the southern parts of provinces.
You know, now that this land comment is out there, I mean, what should happen? What should the federal government's next move be?
Well, I think that, you know, I think about it from the Haudenosaunee perspective, and I know that there's been no real effort from Marc Miller, you know, to sit down and open, you know, negotiation tables. You know, Six Nations is the site of one of the biggest land reclamation actions that's happened in the past year at 1492 Landback Lane. And there was no leadership when Marc Miller was minister in the last term to actually sit down and meet and show up. You know, Ottawa's a short drive to Six Nations. They never actually appeared here on the ground. They never did those things. You know, it's a lot of rhetoric, but not actually the actions that you would hope to see. So I'm thinking that, you know, I'm hoping that because there's a new government in place, that they're going to change and start doing some of these actions. But I mean, if the past 6 years have been any indication, it's going to be a lot of empty promises in the near future.
Well, we thank you for taking the time to chat about this, and I guess we'll see just how much land goes back as per promised by the government.
Thanks for having me.